All right, so you all know me, Evan. I'm going to be the moderator of this debate. We got a debate between Branden and Thomas, and I'll have them introduce themselves in a second. But really quick, if you're a viewer who's not usually viewing this channel and you're viewing it to watch either one of your good friends or just see a good debate, be sure to subscribe. It would help us a lot, and it would help us continue to have further debates. But anyways, this is about the 2024 Republican primary, discussing who's the best candidate, who will fare best in the general, and a lot of other stuff. Maybe talk a little bit about the indictments and Trump. We're going to get to all that. But anyways, I will throw it over to Thomas first. Who are you and why are you here debating today?
My name is Thomas, and I'm a Ron DeSantis supporter. I have supported him ever since probably 2022 after the failure midterms. And I want to give my support on why Ron DeSantis is the better nominee and why he could defeat Joe Biden and take back our country, which is what we desperately need today.
All right, Branden, same to you. Who are you and why are you here debating?
My name is Branden. I live in Arizona and I've supported Trump since 2015, 2016. He was my first election. 2016, I voted in. I voted for him again in 2020, and I'm supporting him again in 2024 because the mission for America First is not over yet, and we have a lot of work to do. So I'm supporting him again.
All right, Branden, let's stay with you right away. So the first topic I wanted to talk about was who you're supporting. So both of you have already said that without me even going there. So thank you for clarifying that. So you're supporting Trump. You've been MAGA for 8 years. Why specifically? Like why are you specifically with Trump? Is there any other candidates you consider? If not, why not?
Well, I'm specifically the movement and what it stands for. Trump is the guy that's the current leader of it, and he basically is our cheerleader for the America First agenda. And there really isn't nobody else in this primary that can fit the bill. I mean, DeSantis is all right, but some of the things that I'm sure we'll go over in this debate here concern me. And so I'm behind Trump again. There were mistakes in 2020, but I'm an optimistic person, and I believe that we're going to change what went wrong and how we're going to proceed with get out the vote efforts and etc.
All right, Thomas, you support DeSantis. Same question to you. You're a DeSantis supporter. Why are you supporting Ron DeSantis specifically? Is there anyone else you'd consider? If not, why not?
Well, after I supported Trump in 2016, obviously I wasn't old enough to vote yet. Even in 2020, I supported him, and I went through with him, even with all the January 6th, throughout that whole 2021 year with Joe Biden absolutely failing our country. Then in 2022, Donald Trump handpicked candidates in a lot of these states like Kari Lake. He picked Tudor Dixon, Matthew DePerno, Kristen Camaro, Tim Michaels, and Doug Mastriano, and his best friend Herschel Walker, and all of them lost. And we were promised a huge red wave with all these MAGA candidates that were across the country, and a lot of them in 2022 got overwhelmingly rejected. And while all the normal Republicans were able to win their elections just fine. And why I support Ron DeSantis is he has proven to be a leader throughout his state of Florida. He was the one who reopened the state when everyone told him not to. He kept his promise on keeping us from COVID-19. He is able to fight against the vaccine mandates. He's been a top supporter of Trump, but he knows that it's time to move on because Donald Trump has been, his star was rising from 2016 to 2020, and Trump lost the recent election. And why would we go with the same stuff that didn't work the last time? And with the best person to defeat Joe Biden is someone who is one of the most influential governors in our country and who is also governing the third largest state in our country and one of the fastest growing states in America.
Any response, Branden, to that topic?
Well, yeah, everything Thomas just said was basically misinformation because where do I pick from there? I mean, he said that the handpicked candidates, no, they weren't handpicked. Republican primary voters all nominated them. They were nominated through a process where people voted. Yes, they were, Thomas.
No, they're not. Most of them.
Well, what would you say, just really quick to Branden, what would you say because Trump did endorse them? Does that not mean much to you? in terms of, does that not mean much
Are
to you?
you talking to
Because
Thomas? Because
no,
he's just wrong here.
I'm talking to you though. You said that the people picked them, which is true, but does the Trump endorsement not mean much to you then?
It means something, but if the people weren't behind Donald Trump and the movement, then they wouldn't have voted for his candidates. I think the reason that 2022 was a flop was because of two things. Roe v. Wade being overturned, which energized the left, and we underestimated that energy. And in turn with that, we didn't have any get out efforts, and our apparatus for that isn't as well formed and organized as the Democrats. And I remain an optimistic person because Donald Trump and the RNC have been recently this year actually have embracing get out the vote, mail-ins, early voting. It's not a perfect system, but we have to play the game in order to win. So I remain optimistic. I think 2020 was a very, very narrow loss. If you look at the swing states that mattered, I mean, there were less than, 80,000 votes in a couple of them. And, if we just did a little bit of effort into it, get out the vote, and we just would make all the difference.
Any response to that, Thomas? Because Brandon does kind of raise a point that Kerry Lake, and Donald Trump did lose, but it was by very, very small margins. Could MAGA win again?
I don't think MAGA can win again. After 2016, it was essentially catching lightning in a bottle. And after 2016 happened, we have not won a federal election in Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan since 2016. We could call Wisconsin Ron Johnson barely getting by when he was the incumbent senator who was overwhelmingly favored. But Morkov does not account for that. Yeah, Trump lost by maybe 43,000 votes, but he's probably a lot weaker candidate than he was in 2020. In 2020, Trump was.
I don't think so. No.
Donald Trump was the incumbent. Incumbents are usually favored in a presidential election. Then Donald Trump refused to concede in the January 6th incident, has pretty much got rid of his credibility,
Okay.
and Donald Trump became very unpopular and very, very, very unfavorable. And you could obviously show from the 2020 election, Donald Trump was very toxic in the suburban areas. Donald Trump lost independence by 13%. He lost ground in the white working class areas, and that was why he lost his 3 states that he won in 2016. He didn't also put the resources in Arizona and Georgia. And if you're going to say about getting out the vote, there was really high turnout for the Republicans. We had high turnout in Georgia. We had high turnout in Florida. We had high turnout in New York.
Certain places, but not nationally.
To get us back into turning out. It's actually how we get our good candidates. Candidate quality matters on how you turn out the voters. You have to motivate your base to turn out.
Well, the base is not for Ron Desantis, that I can tell you.
Oh, then why did he win by 20 points?
Okay,
well, I see the gap is moving.
Let's move to policy for a little bit. So it's clear who you both support. You support DeSantis, respectively, Thomas, and then Trump, Brandon. But I'll go to Thomas first on this one, because obviously DeSantis did win by 20 points. You are correct with that. But he is under a lot of scrutiny, especially with his abortion ban, some of the social issues like LGBTQ that he's gone too far on. Why is he the one to win on policy, and what policies do you think he does best with?
Well, obviously that's some of the propaganda that they've been reaching over, but it had not affected them at all in Florida. And when you go on the abortion, Ron DeSantis has made it clear he won't make any ban in the federal level, which would be a great pivot when you go to the general election. And with the LGBTQ, policies he's been indicating on the education system that we've been needing in our country, that we need to roll back in the federal level and put it back in the states. That's what we need to do. That's what Ron DeSantis has pledged to do. And how Florida has their education being a perfect standard. We don't have these young kids being all indoctrinated with the LGBTQ or America's found on racism really early. So that's how we need to do it in America. Our education system is broken, and we go on how our economy. Florida became one of the fastest growing states due to great policies and lowering taxes. And he's pledged to lower taxes. He's pledged to lower size our government in our Department of Education, our IRS, and our FBI. And the thing is when Donald Trump did pledge to drain the swamp in 2016, he was not able to drain it. He pretty much made it worse than what it was in 2024.
Okay, so similar question about policy to you, Brandon. Obviously, Trump was president, so he got to put in a lot of policies. I do miss
Well,
198 gas. I will say that. But one of the things is, especially with foreign affairs going on now, the border. He had a shot at all this, and the border turned to a disaster right away. Why, policy wise, should we give Trump another shot?
well, before I answer that, I want to rebut Thomas's pitch for DeSantis because I actually think he's one of the most rated politicians out of both parties. Because honestly, if you take a look at facts, Florida right now is the number one inflation spot. A lot of people are saying that have moved there that it is completely unaffordable. Insurance has gone up over 200% under him. And, it's these are the facts. These are the facts here. And
Okay, but
honestly,
here's
these
the thing
positions
about
that he's taken,
Thomas, he gets it.
these
He gets his.
positions,
this stuff
Hang on,
happening.
Thomas. He gets his first 90 seconds. But
these positions that he's taking on abortion, I'm pro-life, but when you tie yourself down to a 6-week abortion ban and you run for president, that does not play well nationally in certain swing states. So I do have a concern with that. The good thing with Trump is, so he doesn't really, he's pro-life, but he's smart and strategic and not allowing, the left to pin him down on certain positions. So anyway, I'll go back to, so what was your question, Evan?
So my question was, what why policy wise, in the sense, should we trust Trump?
Well, because you see what he did over 4 years. He was a pretty good president. I mean, we had a booming economy. We had energy dominance, which was true. I know he says that, but it is. We had cheap gas. Energy was much less cheap, much less expensive than it is now. And, some of the things that he's proposing going forward that he didn't do in his first term was, he wants to help young Americans create a baby boom and really, help the next generation candidates, Democrat or Republican, is talking
All right.
about,
That
young voters.
all right, that's your 90 seconds. I will give Thomas. I know Thomas was eager to jump in. Thomas, what'd you have to say?
Well, Moorcraft is trying to lead about, Florida has inflation and all the insurance costs. Well, does he not know how the economy works when here's the thing, Florida, I have said, is one of the fastest growing states in our country. So when you have a fast growing state like Florida, the demand for goods are going to drive up. So when demand is up, money is going to go up, inflation is going to go up. Everything's going to go up because like the housing prices over there are going to go up because everyone's moving there. The insurance is going up because everyone's moving there. It's kind of common sense how the economy works. This is how Texas is working. Texas has one of the highest real property taxes in the nation because a lot of people move to Texas. It's kind of common sense how economy works. When everyone wants something, it's going to keep going up. It can't stay down forever because then we would have no houses in Florida. We would have no houses in Texas. That's why everything is up in Florida. But it's at the same time, it's one of the fastest growing states, and it's one of the best states in education. It's one of the best states in the economy to do business, and it's one of the best states, quite frankly, in almost like with the lowering taxes, and it's pretty good. Most of this.
Any response, Brandon? He said that Florida is actually, just because of the population, the growth rate is growing that fast, and that's what's going to happen with inflation. Any response?
Well, I think that's just a major deflection and excuse because, when you're the governor, you're the executive of the state, you're in charge of what happens economically, domestically, everything, the nuts and bolts issues of your policies. So, some of the things that DeSantis has done, during COVID, great, he did a good job, but we have to look at everything. We have to lift the hood of the car so you can look at everything because it is not going as well as the corporate conservative media is wanting you to believe. I think America's governor is actually Glenn Youngkin because if you look at what he's done with the hands that he was dealt, he came into a Democrat-leaning state and is basically, changing it to a toss-up. Unbelievable. I would have guessed that years ago, but I mean, I would say America's governor is Youngkin, not DeSantis. Maybe during COVID, DeSantis was, but he's a fading star, and it's kind of sad because he's listening to his donors and the elite and the corporate elite, Fox News, Rupert Murdoch, all these people. And that's one of the big issues that I have with him, but I guess we'll go into it later in this debate.
Okay, so let's actually turn to an issue, and we will go over more of that stuff later, in terms of the general election. But we do got to cover the indictments, and I will start with you, Brandon, because you're supporting Trump. It is likely by the end of this month in Georgia, Trump will face his fourth indictment. How do you convince people that these indictments they're not a big deal? You should still vote for Trump. You should still stand with Trump.
Well, they are a big deal. I mean, it's totally outrageous what the Justice Department and all these radical left prosecutors. I mean, they're stepping over the line that has never been crossed before. We in this country, we do not persecute, go after political opponents, and under Joe Biden, this is taking place, and it is really scary. But I think Trump is safe in most of these cases. The one that I'm worried about is the DC case, but ultimately that will go to the Supreme Court, which I think will rule in Trump's favor. If you look at the polls, his numbers have gone up, his support has gone up. Even with all these indictments, he's either tied or up on Biden. So I think that's a good sign of where things are going. People are waking up and, whoa, this has gone way too far. You're going after a person that you shouldn't play with fire like this, because I tell you, when Trump gets in, he said this, that it's revenge time. And that's kind of an appeal. We want to clean up this mess that the Democrats have created with the Justice Department indictments. We have to fire a lot of people, clean house.
So, Thomas, how should the DeSantis campaign handle this then? Like, how should they just ignore the indictments altogether? Should they use this as an appeal that, hey, I'm not indicted? How should they handle this?
Well,
as the
Ron
indictments
DeSantis'
continue?
campaign has said that the government has been weaponized. So I don't know what you're trying to say. Well, Trump is trying to provide false information, saying that Ron DeSantis' campaign is colluding with the attorney general to help Trump get prosecuted, which has been not proven at all. Washington D.C. case probably it's pretty garbage, honestly, but they have a good judge and a jury that's going to probably convict Trump, unfortunately. And then Georgia is probably going to be the same way. Then you got Florida, who he has a lenient judge there. Then he has the New York case, which is pretty garbage too. But it's going to be really hard for Donald Trump being under 4 criminal cases on a general election when he can't be campaigning. He's going to be stuck in New York. He's going to be stuck in Washington. He's going to be stuck in Florida. He's going to be stuck in Georgia trying to fight off these charges. He won't be able to spend any on the ads. He can't be going to rallies or anything. And while Joe Biden will be out having all this money, he's going to be blasting these ads to all these independents and these suburban people why they voted for Biden, because Biden is not being prosecuted. He's not under investigation. He's not committed a riot, a quote unquote riot in January 6th. And when you go off of the polls that you've been citing, if you look at the cross-stab polls, they're very misleading in many ways. They have really bad numbers for Donald Trump. 55% of Republicans who think if Trump is convicted, they won't support him, which is pretty bad. If you look at Trump support getting 94% of the support in 2020, and when you go on the crosstabs of these polls, they say Gen Z is tied with Biden.
All right.
That's untrue.
Thank you, Thomas. That's been 90 seconds. So we'll open up to open discussion. Any response, Brandon?
He's just so wrong. He's just so wrong, because if you look at the polls, there was an Emerson College poll that came out, and it shows Trump is up 2 over Biden in Michigan. Now,
if you look at the crosstabs
from Michigan,
if you look at
I thought Thomas being from Michigan.
If you look at the crosstabs, when you go on these polls, you have to actually go on these crosstabs. If you go on this Harris poll that Trump cited in his ad, it says Gen Z is tied with Biden. That is probably no way possible. They say that Trump has 24% in the black vote. Probably false. He says that Trump's only down in the Hispanic vote by 6%. Most likely false.
You hear this? You hear this? He doesn't like the polls, so he's
a lot of these crosstabs are very bad. A lot of these crosstabs are very bad, and you have actually no support on this. 55% people won't support Trump if he's convicted.
You have no support.
All right, Thomas, let give Brandon a chance to respond. Yeah.
So Thomas is from Michigan. He doesn't know his own home state, so I don't know how he about other stuff, because in Michigan, Trump is up 48% in a recent Emerson poll, and all of the Republican representatives, the entire Republican delegation in Michigan, the congressional delegation, has endorsed Donald Trump. So being up 48 points in the Michigan Republican primary, it just shows that this is with Donald Trump, and you can't make up a margin like that if you're DeSantis. I don't see how you can, and I don't see how you can win over it, because these polls just show that DeSantis is on a rival in the Rust Belt states. You can say goodbye to Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin if you have Ron DeSantis. At least Trump makes it 50-50, where if you have good get out the vote efforts and you have a good narrative, you can win those states.
Any response,
Well,
Thomas?
you just cited Emerson polling, and if you actually look in the 2022 and 2020 records, they were pretty bad when they were pretty off. So you're kind of looking at the wrong polls
Well,
there. And sure, but
when
Trump is
you're up
probably by a big margin in
48
Michigan
points,
because,
okay, we'll take
no,
10
Morecraft,
points
you got to
off.
listen
He's
here on
still up
this
30.
issue. Is that yes, because a lot of the Congress delegation did not want to get primaried because they saw what happened to Peter Meyer, because you got John James who flip-flopped on his issue saying Trump was unfit to lead, Bill Huizenga, who's been very moderate on Trump. So you actually are looking at it completely wrong. And you got these polls in Marquette in Wisconsin saying Trump would get blown out, while Ron would make it a seasonal reasonable margin. So you're looking at the polls completely wrong. You're saying that Ron would have no chance in Rust Belt when Ron DeSantis has
I don't
overwhelmingly
think so.
has a great Rust Belt record. He has a great background in his youth. When Joe Biden used how he was from Pennsylvania back when he was a kid, how do you think people reacted? They wanted to vote for someone who.
Okay, so let's move to that. Let's move to the general election, because I want to talk about that. And obviously, we have a primary we got to focus on first. That's true. But the general election, how favorable are you? Can you win a general election? I'll go to you first, Thomas. With DeSantis, DeSantis was polling very well up until about this summer, actually about until he announced. And now usually most polls he's trailing Biden, and Trump does better percentage-wise. Why do you think that is?
Well, I have recently just told Brandon this crosstab polls. If you actually look at them from like Emerson,
but it's the majority of polls though. But yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of the polls are pretty bad with the crosstabs, and typically right now in 2023, the election's a year away. And then if you also look at the polling, is that a lot of people don't answer the polls. Like, how many people have been polled in this? Who has been polled? Have you been polled, Brandon?
Not me.
No.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people don't actually get polled because no one recognizes the phone calls, and they go off a list that people have been polled before. So a lot of people don't typically have time to do that. And when you go off of the same polling, the crosstabs are pretty bad because it just doesn't make sense at all when you go off of the 2020 and 2022 elections. And Ron DeSantis has actually pulled better in Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin even. And you're just saying he's dead on arrival when it's not true, because Ron DeSantis has not campaigned there. Of course, Trump has name ID recognition for being the president. He was also the Republican nominee both times. He had 8-year recognition that Ron DeSantis needs to catch up with. And when you're going off of Trump has lost Georgia and Arizona the first time that happened since Bill Clinton. And you got,
because of COVID.
That's an excuse, and that's kind of what a weak leader does, is make excuses and blame other people, like Trump did in 2020. He blamed Brian Kemp for losing Georgia. He blamed Doug Ducey for losing Arizona. And Ron DeSantis has not blamed anyone for his failures. He's probably blamed himself. And Ron DeSantis is rebooting his campaign. He's going out in Iowa campaigning, going to all 99 counties, reaching out to voters. And Trump
That's 90 seconds. Thank you, Thomas. I'm going to get Brandon in on this. So same thing about Trump. Polls have shown that, say, Trump does very well in like Ohio. But I think even if Trump, say, wins by 10% and Ron DeSantis wins by 2%, a win in Ohio is still a win. What about the rest? What about Arizona and Georgia, which are becoming very important states for Republicans now? Is Trump more favorable there? How would he favor in a general election there?
Oh, like I said before, I'm very optimistic because Trump and the RNC and myself, we have all changed our tune on, mail-in voting, early voting, and get out the vote efforts. In a perfect world, I would want same-day voting, election day, not election season, but we can't do that now because it's just how the system is. We have to play the game, and I'm very optimistic on that front because we have many great people behind Trump, and the evidence in the pudding, as they say, because Ron DeSantis' average campaign donation is over $200. Donald Trump's is $30. in 34 in the recent FEC filing. And it just shows that the people are behind Donald Trump, and you cannot win an election without a base. The base is the foundation for your win. You build on that, and Donald Trump is going to. The good thing about this is you learn from your mistakes in 2020 and 2022. The thing is, we lost those very, very narrowly with some questions of shenanigans going on and certain things happening, and just a little effort can win these elections. And I'm very confident because the base is behind Donald Trump, and they're going to propel him to victory.
All right, Thomas, any response?
Well, when you go off of the base, do you mean like 25% of the voters that are only for Trump, or are you going off of whatever base you're talking about? Because if you actually look at the data from Georgia, specifically in 2020, Trump lost Cobb County, Gwinnett by double digits, and he's bound to lose it by even more.
Well, Georgia was trending Democrat since Romney, and before, it was slowly picking up, but it became more urban over the last maybe 5 or 6 years.
Turnoff against college whites, and then Trump's probably going to do worse in those areas, which will make Georgia hardly impossible to make red if you can't even get in the Gwinnett and Cobb to decent margins. Then we go in Arizona, which has been a trending left state. Carrie Lake got rejected despite having all the polls in her favor. And when you're going off the poll, yes, she did get rejected because Katie Hobbs won the election, and therefore.
Brandon, what do you mean she didn't get rejected?
Well, I don't really want to go into this because I think we did it in our last video, but Carrie Lake was screwed out of the, and then even Joe Rogan and all these people that are sort of in the middle and the cultural influence sphere are saying that Carrie Lake was screwed because from experience, I didn't really buy into the election, was stolen narrative in 2020. I thought there was, things that went wrong, things that were, with the Biden laptop and this media suppression and this and that. But I didn't think, ballot boxes were stuff. But in 2022 Arizona, there was intentional malice with voting machines and this and that. And I was personally affected when I voted. I stood in line for an hour and a half. While I was in that line, I saw many people getting out of line because people have stuff to do. People got to go, pick up their kids from school, this and that. They can't stand in a line to vote for an hour and a half.
But doesn't that make a better case to be voting early and voting by mail?
Well, yes, it does.
So why did the Republicans take 3 years to actually embrace this? Donald Trump is the reason we have mail-in voting everywhere because he signed the CARES Act which gave states the mail-in voting. So he pretty much set up the mail-in system, and he told people not to vote by mail. And that's why
you're
that's
looking at stuff
leads, because we're relying on catch-up on election day. We rely on losing by 40,000 votes or more. We are relying that we're going to have enough on election day to win. And that has failed every single time. And in Arizona, the Republicans outperformed down ballot against Carrie Lake. David Schweikert still got by. Eli Crane won. Juan Omani won. The Republicans
they would have won a lot more if it wasn't for the shenanigans.
All right, quick Brandon response, and then I want to get one more thing before we're done. But quick Brandon response to that.
Well, he's just so wrong. Thomas takes data from years ago. I have my mind focused on the future in this upcoming election, and I look at
you need data from the past to actually know
now.
what you did wrong.
I'm looking at what we're doing now. Hey, Donald Trump just announced a get out the vote effort, and he's embracing all this stuff
in 2020 and 2022.
Because we all still hold the belief that elections should be held on one day in November, the second,
So why did
first
Trump sign
Tuesday.
the CARES Act then, if he believed that?
Why? Because we were in the middle of COVID, and that's just typical Washington. They add a bunch of pork to a bill and they make you vote on it.
So
all right, we got
it's really unfair. It's really unfair.
We got to move on, Brandon. So the last thing I want to ask is at when we did this back in January, both of you said, I asked a question, will you support the Republican nominee? Both of you said yes. We're in a heated primary. Stuff is going to be said. I understand that. But is your answer still the same or has it changed? I will go to you, Thomas, first. If so, why or why not?
Well, it's really hard to say because I have, done all this work and I've talked to many people let's just say Donald Trump does win the election in 2024, who is going to be working for him? All of his Trump officials that he had as president ended up, they don't want him to run again. He has pretty much only people that probably work for him is all of his grifters that he has on his team right now. You know, he might even hire Laura Loomer or something just
But
because
that's not answering the question though.
No,
Would
I'm going hypothetically.
Question, doctor.
I'm going hypothetically that probably no one would want to work for him, and he'll be a dead duck for 4 years. So I am unsure because the election is still far away, and I don't know how it's going to work by July 2024. Either if Trump's in prison or he still can be on the RNC stage in the convention. So,
all right, same question to you, Brandon. You said back in January you would support the Republican nominee, no matter who it is. Do you still agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I just want to say Thomas is a complete and total rhino because he will not commit to support Trump, and that is problematic because we have to defeat Joe Biden. And I don't know if Tom is a Democrat plant, but
a lot has changed. You got to admit that. I will just.
There's some serious questions about that.
Well, I mean, Trump wasn't
a lot
Democrat
has changed.
before that.
A lot
so
has changed. Yes, the
rhino
Democrat Party is weaponizing the justice system against the former president, which is never
why
been
is Donald Trump
before.
accusing Ron DeSantis of being a part of that weaponized government?
Look, I'm not going to get into that because
because you know that what Donald Trump is saying right now is bullcrap. He's been gaslighting his supporters, saying that Ron DeSantis was a shutdown guy or something.
Let me tell you. Most people don't believe that. Come on.
He's lying to his base. Saying Andrew Cuomo did better against COVID. He said Charlie Crist was a better governor. Both are Democrats. Is Trump really a Republican? Is he really Republican? He's been a Republican
Trump plays a game to win, and you're in a primary. You're not supposed to be nice to your opponents. You want to defeat them. So I understand where he's coming from. Regardless of the substance to it. Why is Trump the better candidate? Because Ron DeSantis is being funded by the elites and the globalists right now. And that's why I have my biggest problem with DeSantis.
Donald Trump would fund these candidates.
Donald Trump
was a part of the elite many years ago. And now you're telling me he's a man of the people? Donald Trump has billions of dollars in the bank, and now he's relying on you and his base to go on his legal fees. Ron DeSantis, sure.
Ron DeSantis is no perfect guy either.
If you actually look, if you don't have donors, you're not going to win. When has grassroots worked? It hasn't worked for Doug Mastriano. It did not work for Tudor Dixon. It didn't work for many of these people and then you're going to blame the donors.
So you're saying you're okay with corporations and globalist entities and billionaires buying politicians so that when they get into office, they serve their interests.
For many years.
The interest
Donald
of the
Trump
people.
Was a billionaire. Why are you saying?
All right, I'll give you guys each one more chance. If Thomas wants a response and Brandon wants a response, then we got to go quickly. But go ahead, Thomas.
Well, Donald Trump was a billionaire for many years. He was donating to both parties. And wouldn't you consider that part of the elite? Like, what are you trying? You're like raising the goalposts at this point. And
Donald Trump is not part of the elite.
Donations because when
he's a wealthy guy.
Hang on, Brandon. I said I'd give him and then you'll give him.
You need the money to fund your campaign. Donors work and then fundraising works, but you also need donors to help you win the election. You need to get your ads out. You need to get your name out, and that's how you win. You secured the ship with the donors so you could get your name out. When you don't have donors, you're not going to win an election.
All right, Brandon, final response.
Ron DeSantis is your typical career politician, and he's using the same playbook as the Democrats and the establishment Republicans use when it comes to raising money for campaigns. And, these people are the reason why America is in decline, and it has been in decline for a couple of decades now. Donald Trump, Thomas says that he's wealthy, he's donated to these people. Yeah, he did great in America. He made money. That is our capitalist system. But even with all that, he's still the outsider in this election, despite being president and everything. And I think he'll be, an even better president if he is so fortunate to have a second term because he knows how Washington works. He knows who's bad, he knows who to trust, and he knows who not to trust.
All right, Brandon, we're gonna have to leave it there. But anyways, I just want to say thank you. It seems like campaign finance is going to be big thing. Who's getting the big donor money? We'll have to see. But anyways, Thomas, Brandon, thank you. Come back when it gets more interesting.
Thank you.
All right?